Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Stephanie. For anyone watching today's video, this one's a little bit different from anything I've ever posted before. This is actually for my professor, so if you are seeing this and you are not my professor, buckle up because you might learn something today. Alright, so as you can assume from the title of the video, today we're going to be discussing transatlantic accents and the problematic relationships that they have with political context. I'll be giving guidance as to when to change your slide if you do have that information, so don't worry about that. It's running a little different than it would be for someone else, but that's just how I run things, so that's just how it's going to go. So you may be wondering to yourself, what even is the transatlantic accent? And if you've ever seen a movie with Katharine Hepburn or Bette Davis, you have heard this accent most likely. And if you move to the next part of the slide, you will see an example link. So you can see Bette Davis and Katharine Hepburn there. And then you can also take a look at that link so you can see kind of the vibes of what that was. Now, in terms of what it really was, it was a mixture between the British and American accent, which, granted, we're going to get into this a little bit later. It wasn't really a real accent at all. It was manufactured. Um, and this is something that was around as early as the 1920s, although it's said that it's closer to the 1930s, but it's a little varied. There are a few people that are attributed to this accent. Arguably, the most important is Edith Skinner, and if you go back to your next slide, you'll see Edith Skinner and her book, which is called Speaking with Distinction, which is written in 1942, which focuses on the clarity and precision and musicality of language. And if you see there on that slide, you will also see an excerpt from that book explaining a little bit of what that really means. Um, so basically, this distinguished style of speech became synonymous with professionalism and sophistication, especially in the mid 40s. Sorry about that. When Edith was at her peak. And in addition to Edith, there was another practice that had become popular in relation to this, which was called elocution, or they can also be referred to as elocution classes, which you'll see if you go to the next slide after that. And elocution is the art of clear and expressive speech, whose foundations can be traced back to ancient Greece and Rome, where rhetoric is considered a valuable skill. It was seen as essential in public space as it helped to develop and strengthen egos, lothos, and pathos of the individual. However, in the 18th and 19th century, the Enlightenment period marked a resurgence of elocution. And in terms of the movement of elocution, Irish actor Thomas Sheridan became a leader of elocution, and it was his belief that the proper and gestural speech was essential for society to progress. But what is it about it that is so problematic, and how does it relate to political and social issues? Aside from the fact that this is a manufactured language, it's not real. No one actually talks like this genuinely. It's not real. Beside that fact, it may be considered that the purpose of the accent is to bridge the gap between Britain and America and to allow for Americanization in Britain. However, it remains problematic in that it still brings favor to superiority of one culture over another, much like we see with ethnocentrism. Maybe even Eurocentrism, if you want to include that. In an interview between radio creatives and interviews which were shared, which reinforces the concepts of the transatlantic accent and its intended purpose. It stated that elocution classes were considered a way to sound worldly. To sound worldly and cultured was to sound sort of British. In film, this accent would be portrayed by fancy, upper-class people and would often be considered to be what you would imagine your life to one day be. In the 1950s, after World War I, this accent seemed to disappear from the media overnight. But why? This was due to emerging actors like Marlon Brando, like you'll see in, it'll be two slides. So the next one will be that slide that has Thomas Sheridan there, and then it also has a picture of the elocution classes, so you can kind of get an idea as to what that was like. So on this current slide that we're talking about, you'll see Marlon Brando, and you'll see that he was doing an entirely different style of acting. And so he essentially learned that this doesn't really fit what we're doing anymore, so we're just going to not do that anymore. And so essentially what we were doing was putting a focus on an accent that fits somewhere rather than nowhere, as in it's actually kind of better to not be neutral than to be so neutral that you don't fit in anywhere. It's really just kind of silly at this point, considering the goals of what's going on. Um, the transatlantic accent has not fully disappeared in modern society, and it still remains in performance entertainment today. However, the shift that's been made, as it's once been seen as a symbol of social status or success or strength, it's now often viewed as a sense of comedy or sarcasm, and it's often given to portrayal of villainous roles um, or antagonists, and rather than people who are explicitly valued, which is definitely a big shift from what we saw in the beginning. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Have a great day. Bye.